What happens when the consequences of being a hero finally catches up to you?
Welcome back to the Covenant Archives. Today I'm going to be covering one of the most pivotal moments in Marvel Comics Company's history, the death of Ultimate Spider-Man. If you guys enjoy the video, please leave a like and leave a comment of what you want us to do next, and if there's anything else that we can critique about the video to your guys' liking. But without further ado, let's get into it. Just for a little bit of context, if you guys don't know the comics Ultimate Spider-Man, it's essentially an interpretation of Spider-Man that takes him at a much younger age and gives him his powers, and us the reader gets to see how he uses these powers as well with dealing with the responsibilities that come with them. With that being said, we dive into this story with the Green Goblin, Harry Osborn, breaking out of prison, as well as breaking out Kraven, Dr. Octopus, Electro, and Sandman. We then cut to Captain America and Peter Parker sitting at a cemetery. Captain America lectures Peter, saying that he fights crime like there's no tomorrow, he fights crime like it's a game, and that Peter being on the Ultimates was a mistake, and that Captain America actually voted to have him benched. And due to him being outvoted on this decision, he took it as his responsibility to train Peter so that he wouldn't eventually die. This is when Captain America gets a call, hearing that there's been a breakout at S.H.I.E.L.D.'s facility. But that's not their main concern. Their main concern is that Fury's Black Ops team has actually gone rogue. Captain America gets on his bike and tells Peter not to follow. But Peter shits on this old ass nigga saying, "What are you gonna do? Stop me?" This is when we cut to Norman Osborn and the rest of the villains that he just broke out of the S.H.I.E.L.D.'s facility, watching the news, seeing that the Ultimates are busy dealing with something on the bridge. This is when Norman Osborn explains that this is a gift from God. This here, what I show you, is a brand new opportunity to kill Peter Parker. We then cut to Peter watching the bridge fucking blow up when Mary Jane calls the cellular device. This is when we cut back to the villains plotting their next move. Kraven recommends that they just skip town, but Norman's on his hot shit. He says, "No, I want that little nigga head." Pause, what the fuck you mean by that? No, chill, that's not what I meant. I'm just trying to get the kill. Hey, yo. Norman Osborn and Otto Octavius go back and forth on whether they should kill Peter Parker, with Octavius saying that he wants to be a scientist and genuinely help people, showing that S.H.I.E.L.D.'s rehabilitation has actually worked on him, while Norman Osborn is just on some hot pedophile shit. This enrages Norman, causing him to turn into the Goblin and hit this out the window. Otto then uses his powers to gather some metal, forming into metal tentacles, saying, "Just because I don't want to fight doesn't mean I forgot how to," as he smacks the Goblin across his big ass forehead. We then cut to Peter Parker getting home. He frantically explains to Aunt May and Gwen Stacy that they need to leave, that the Goblin, he's loose, and he's coming after me with a mini army of all the people that I've beaten up. Peter becomes more and more frantic. Peter exclaims, "No, you guys don't understand. They know who I am. They know that I'm Peter Parker. They know where I live. You guys need to go now." While Aunt May and Gwen Stacy pack, Aunt May turns to Peter saying, "You need to come with us." Peter's eyes soften, explaining that he can't and that he has a responsibility. We then cut to Norman Osborn throwing hands with Dr. Octavius in the middle of New York City. After throwing fireballs at Octavius, Norman jumps on him. Otto Octavius' arms try to hold him back, but are unsuccessful. This is when Norman lands blow after blow after blow, caving this head in. We see Octavius' metal arms fall. Norman Osborn has done it. He's killed Dr. Octavius. Peter arrives to the battlefield a little bit too late. Seeing what's left of Otto Octavius, he grabs his mouth in disgust. Peter then asks the civilian which way did they go, but when he arrives to the place that they were staying at beforehand, they're not there. He then looks at the TV screen, seeing the battle taking place on the bridge. He decides to head back, but while he's swinging there, he sees Frank Castle, the Punisher, with a sniper rifle aimed at Captain America, who is standing over Nick Fury. Spider-Man aims and shoots a web at Frank, but he misses. The bullet is then fired, right at Captain America. Spider-Man is barely fast enough to get him out of the way, but in doing so, the bullet shoots right through his abdomen. Because of this, Peter passes out. When he wakes back up, he sees that the bridge is destroyed and that he's bleeding profusely. As a scared little kid, he wants to go to the hospital. He wants to get help, but he knows that he can't. He knows that he has a responsibility to keep. That if people found out that he was Spider-Man, well, if more people found out that he was Spider-Man, then he'll put his family in even more danger than they already are. He makes the brave decision to web up his wounds and swing to the place that he believes that Norman Osborn and the rest of the villains are going to be. We then cut to Bobby and Johnny Storm chilling with each other on their way to the Peter Parker estate. We then cut to Bobby Drake, aka Iceman, and Johnny Storm, aka the Human Torch, walking to the Peter estate. Just for a little bit of context, around this time, Johnny Storm and Bobby were both staying with Peter at this time. When Bobby and Johnny make it home, they're confused on why nobody is there, with Johnny exclaiming that he doesn't keep his phone on him because whenever he's with the girl, he gets too excited and ends up melting it. They then begin to leave the house, but when they open the door, Norman and the other villains are waiting for them, exclaiming, "Give us Peter Parker." Johnny comes back saying, "Get out of here before I have to paint you a new set of eyebrows." As we hear flame on, and Johnny charges at Norman Osborn. Norman responds by quickly turning into the Goblin. As they charge, a gigantic explosion goes off. Norman groans in pain, but then Sandman attacks Johnny from behind, suffocating him with his sand, eventually extinguishing his flames. Bobby then comes from above, blasting Sandman to free Johnny, but that's when Electro blasts Bobby, pushing him back. But despite Bobby's efforts, Johnny isn't able to recover. Electro exclaims, "Really, Bobby? Ice and water?" as Bobby throws a bunch of ice shurikens at him. This causes a huge explosion, which flings Bobby to a nearby house. "Hey, DeMarcus, honey, can you see what's happening outside? There's a lot of commotion." Shaquiqui, you might want to look outside. As Bobby and Johnny Storm are both incapacitated, the entire Sinister Six looks down the street to see the figure of a young boy. This causes Vulture to have the ultimate hard arm because he's into little kids, and he charges at this like he's R. Kelly on steroids, just for Peter to web his face, swinging him into another house. Peter, in excruciating pain, feels the bullet moving through him. He exclaims, "Who's next?" while he huffs heavily. As he looks around seeing Norman, Bobby, and Johnny all incapacitated, he says, "Okay, there's only this amount of people left, let's do this." Peter's plan is just to stall until the Ultimates can get here. Peter exclaims loudly, "Here's what's gonna happen. A bunch of superheroes are gonna come here and help me, and that's including S.H.I.E.L.D. So, if you surrender," that's when Kraven cuts him off, saying, "It's a bluff. Look at this child. He's a mess." Sandman also calls Peter's bluff. This causes them to all charge at Peter. Peter responds by kicking over a fire hydrant, which causes Electro to get wetter than your bitch when she sees Pulio in them leggings. And because of his electric nature, this causes a huge explosion, which knocks him, Sandman, and Kraven to the ground. Electro is then knocked out of his electric form, and before he could change back, he's webbed up by Peter and punched in the face. Peter kneels in pain, no Ryan Garcia. While Peter is on the floor, he exclaims that was all he had left. That's when Peter looks up and says, hello? That's when he sees a bunch of people taking pictures. Peter then exclaims, "Can somebody please call an ambulance? I'm not doing so great over here." Now, just to take a quick break real quick. So you mean to tell me that you just seen this, I don't know, 14, 15-year-old boy just get the shit kicked out of him? He's bleeding everywhere. And instead of, calling 911, seeing all the destruction going around, you decide to whip your phone out and start recording like a inbred. My apologies, back to the story. As Peter's back is turned, his spider senses go off. This is when Sandman jumps on him and begins to suffocate Peter. Peter is then launched into the air saying, I know I'm under attack, telling his spider sense. But that's when R. Kelly Jr. hits him out of the air, probably him while he hit the ground. He then proceeds to throw a bunch of Diddy grenades at Peter. Peter then attempts to web up the grenades to try to limit the explosion. But the explosion is too much, and Peter is propelled backwards. While on the highway, Aunt May gets a call from one of the neighbors. They exclaim that there's a huge fight going on outside, and that they believe that Peter Parker is actually Spider-Man, and that there are a bunch of villains here. Aunt May then exclaims, "What's happening? Where's Peter Parker?" She exclaims that the villains are killing him. Gwen and Aunt May then turn the car around, speeding towards Peter's location. We then switch back to Peter getting the living kicked out of him. He gets punched, kicked, thrown into a garbage can, thrown into a car, thrown into a mailbox, as Peter lays on the ground hurt and defeated. He's worried that the entire world now knows that he's Peter Parker. And as Sandman goes to deliver the finishing blow, he gets shot in the back by electricity. Electro's naked ass then says, "No, he's mine." This is when Electro is shot 3 to 4 different times in the back. We then see Aunt May with a smoking gun. Aunt May just turned that into Swiss cheese. Made him look like Olivia from On My Block. If you know, you know. Peter rushes in giving her a hug, saying it's okay, I got it now, as he falls to his knees. While Aunt May screams for somebody to call an ambulance. These niggas still ain't call anybody? What the f? Gwen then rushes to check on Bobby and Johnny. They're both breathing and should be fine. While Peter hugs Aunt May, he cries saying he's sorry and that this is the life that he wanted for his family. Aunt May says, "You're a crazy boy, yes you are." But Peter says, "At least I'm kinda cute." But once those words left his mouth, Norman Osborn slams on the ground. Peter is barely able to get Aunt May and Gwen Stacy out of there in time. He screams, "Go!" Before Norman can even land, he catches himself on the lamppost saying, "Can you just stay right there? I'm not doing so great." This is when Peter swings away, just for the Goblin to scream, "Get back here." Peter then swings to Johnny Storm, trying to wake him up. When Johnny finally awakes, he says, "Don't worry, Peter, I got this," understanding the situation. But when he goes to attack the Goblin absorbs his heat energy to the point that he's emitting a white flame. Johnny falls to the ground, saying, "I tried." Peter looks up to see the Goblin in a blaze. He musters all the strength that he has left and attacks the Goblin, hitting him with a mailbox, then extinguishing him with a fire hydrant. Peter uses every ounce of strength that he has to push Norman back. But the Goblin, he's too strong, he's too durable.
Peter then yells at the Goblin, "Do you think that this is gonna bring Harry back?" Norman then responds no. He then screams, "But at least the Spider-Man will be dead." As Norman prepares the finishing blow, we look in the distance to see a light. All we hear is a horn, and Mary J drives a truck into this nigga. Peter runs over and kisses MJ, saying, "Get the hell out of here." And then we see Norman begin to crawl out of the truck's wreckage, screaming, "I am God's message. God wanted this to happen." Despite Peter's body being battered and broken, he's able to lift the semi-truck and slam it on top of Norman Osborn's big-ass head. Norman then looks up at Peter saying, "I'm going to destroy you and your family, just like you did mine." Peter screams, "Shut up," as he slams the truck back down on Norman, causing a gigantic explosion, blasting Peter back. We then look within the wreckage to see Norman Osborn's human hand, insinuating that he's been defeated. This is where Johnny Storm runs over to Peter's body, saying, "I think you got him." Peter in response then says, "Good, that's about all I had left." But then Mary Jane, looking at Peter's condition, begins to scream, "Somebody call 911. As Aunt May begins to run through the crowd, Peter says, "I told you guys not to be here. You guys shouldn't be here." As Aunt May falls to her knees, grabbing her dying nephew, she screams, "Peter, what did you do?" Peter says, in a weakened voice, "It's okay. I did it. I was able to do it. I finally saved you. I couldn't do it before. I couldn't save Uncle Ben, but I was able to do it now. I saved you. I saved every single one of you." Peter's eyes begin to close, and his hand begins to go limp, falling from Aunt May's coat. Everybody's eyes go wide. They realize that it's over, and that the Spider-Man is dead. As Johnny begins to lean over his body to listen to his heart. But when Johnny stands back up, he's too stunned to say a word. Aunt May then cries, saying, "No, not him too." As MJ grabs Peter's corpse, she begins to cry. But then we look over to see Norman Osborn smiling as he begins to fade himself, knowing that he's done it. Norman Osborn has done it. He has killed Peter Parker, the Spider-Man. I hope you guys liked this video, and I hope you guys like this storytelling. I'm not used to doing this type of narration, but I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you guys want to see more comic related stuff like this, please click that follow button and leave recommendations below of what we should do next. And if you guys want to see how certain individuals react to Peter's death, such as Aunt May, Captain America, and even J. Jonah Jameson, I'm gonna try to make some shorts upon them and link them in the description below when I can. But I hope you guys liked the video, and without further ado, peace out, God bless.